This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Welcome to episode 250 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. It's a special one, of course, being one of those round numbers, but also being 250. It sounds like a kind of a cool number. And I'm making this special episode all about making friends through podcasting. Because making this podcast for the last 5.5 years or so has been immensely fun and so satisfying for many, many reasons. But one really important reason, perhaps nearly the most important, is that I have made good friends and fabulous connections through this podcast. I'm really just getting to chat with all these amazing guests. It's such a huge privilege and just so enjoyable. I've now chatted with close to 250 guests, some of them several times. And I have to say that actually in researching for this episode, I found that my recordings very often start the same way, and they're talking about hitting record, like this one. I have not ever forgotten, but it is my fear. You are number 217 of people I've interviewed, and I have never not hit record, but I don't want you to be the first. So, yeah. That was with my chat with Caitlin Jane, but honestly, nearly every recording I make with someone pretty much starts exactly the same. The other alternative is that I mention my cat, like in this chat with Karen Emmanuel. As I said, I edit heaps anyway, so it doesn't matter too much. My last call, I had my cat suddenly appear, but there's not much to do about her. So if you see a cat wander through, just ignore her, pretend she's not there.
Ditto over here, because I have two that quite often come up and bother me, but I fed them just now in the hope that they wouldn't.
I did the same with mine. I've got two as well, but one of them in particular, it's just her current habit. She didn't do it for a long time. I mean, she's 13, but just this year suddenly she walks across here and lies down on my pile of papers. It's very noisy, so then it's very inconvenient for a podcaster, but anyway. Yeah. Hopefully, she's done it once already. That'll be out of her system. Anyway, apart from me being repetitive and kind of nuts, I actually wanted to talk in this episode about some of the friends I have made through podcasting. I was trawling through my archives and looking at some of the interviews I've done over the years. And, it reminded me that I have made these good friends that I first met by interviewing them on the podcast, or perhaps had vaguely known in another context, on social media or something. But really, I got to know them by chatting with them for the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. And years later, they're still people that I speak to regularly. And that is wonderful. They're all around the world, all kinds of cool people. And aren't I lucky that I've, made these new friends through podcasting? Now, some of the people I'm featuring today, I'm featuring a handful of people today, but it's definitely not an exhaustive list of all the wonderful friends I've made through the podcast. Just a selection, mostly people that I've met, quite a few years back, 3 or 4 years back through the podcast. And still to this day, we speak regularly. They're good, wonderful supporters of the show. And I'm, really happy that I have them in my world. So just to start off with, one is Ian from the Barefoot Backpacker, and I've actually got another snippet from the typical beginning of an interview where we discuss, as I do with many people, don't worry if you say something silly because we can edit, and don't worry because I say lots of stupid stuff too. I mean, honestly, when I go back and edit, if I feel the need to take out too many ums from a conversation, the ums pretty much usually come from me and not my guests. So I'll chat more about Ian in a second, but here's just one of those typical beginnings of a recordings with Ian Oliver from the Barefoot Backpacker.
Presumably as well, anything that goes horrendously wrong or
we will edit it out.
Silences, you can just edit out anyway.
Absolutely, yes, definitely. No worries at all. So don't stress if you find yourself tongue-tied or whatever. It's all good. So Ian, or the Barefoot Backpacker, as he's probably better known as, especially online, we actually met on Twitter It turns out, actually, Ian did a bit of research on this recently and found that we had first chatted back in October 2015, but this recording for the podcast was a couple of years later in August 2017. And it's really interesting. I'll just play some of the end of it, actually. We'd been chatting about travelling to so-called dangerous countries. Ian's a traveller who's been to a lot of those corners of the globe that don't get mentioned as often, which is, of course, one of the reasons I found him so interesting to chat to. And we actually ended up meeting in person the following year, about 2018. I think I've got that right, because Ian took a trip around the world for a while, had a sabbatical from work, and we met up in a pub in Fremantle, just near here in Perth. And that was just, it's always lovely to meet people you've already known online and to meet up with them in real life. That was an awesome beer. And since then we have, we chat very, very frequently. And he's started his own podcast, Travel Tales from Beyond the Brochure. And to hear him speak in this extract about his kind of first podcasting experience makes me think, wow, things have really changed in those few years. And it's just, I don't know, it's just really fun. So I'll let you listen now and I'll stop raving on.
Absolutely not. I mean, you get situations where you have really bad things happening in very small parts of the country, but
exactly.
The Western media just highlight the whole country as being dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. That's right. So true. Yeah. Oh dear. I've just noticed the time, and I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap it up because I have to go and get my young boy. Otherwise, I'll be the worst mother in the world.
That's right. Well, I mean, we've been chatting for just over an hour. So
we have, and I've got so much fabulous material from you for the podcast. So thank you so much.
Let me know if you want to do it again, and there's more that you want me to talk about, because I could probably talk about travel for ages.
Well, I'm sure you could. Well, that's fabulous. Thank you, because I have a few people on a kind of a emergency list if I've got a couple of like I'm needing just something else on a particular topic, and I think oh yeah, he could talk about that. So I will keep you in mind. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It's been excellent chat, and I will ping you on Twitter and email and stuff when an episode comes out with some of your wise words in it.
Excellent. It'll be very interesting to hear it. This is the first time I've done this sort of thing for anyone, so this is quite cool.
Oh, well, thank you. You should do more of it because you've got lots of amazing stories to tell. So, yes. I hope you enjoy listening to it when it comes out.
There's a reason why my blog is called Travel Tales from Beyond the Brochure.
Yes.
Someone actually described the way I speak and the way I write as being imagining an old man in a pub talking to people over a drink. I can't quite tell if that was a compliment or just a neutral statement. But I like it. I like that.
I quite like it too. I think it's probably a good description. I wouldn't have said old though, but yes. That's excellent. Cool. Well, thanks heaps, Ian. It was really lovely to talk to you, and thank you for getting up so early for me. Now, my next example of a friend I've made through podcasting is Penny Wincer. Penny and I connected, I want to say over Instagram. I really can't remember, and maybe, Penny, when you listen, you can tell me, because I actually can't remember, but we'd had a discussion about travels with people with disabilities and so on, and we'd also connected well as we chatted because Penny is originally Australian from Melbourne but has lived in the UK for a long time now. And so when in our chat we actually we have an interesting little chat about some of the cultural differences that people find when they come to Australia, or maybe particularly to Perth. Now, since then, Penny and I have just stayed in touch, especially over social media. Her first book came out last year and I read it this year. It's called Tender, The Imperfect Art of Caring. And I mention it because it is one of my very, very favourite reads of the year. And so I feel, lucky to have got to know Penny. So here's a little extract from our chat from 2017. And excuse me in advance because obviously I had quite a bad cold when we were chatting. So just a warning, I cough.
And I also let my kids go barefoot all the time. And so I also get dirty looks about that.
Well, if you were back in Australia, you'd be totally fine there. But yes.
Yeah, Yeah. Well, I grew up barefoot. My kids are going to be barefoot even if we live in
Absolutely.
London. They're quite tough with the weather as well. They don't seem to care. So
Oh, good on them. On the barefoot thing, I always remember when I was teaching ESL here in Australia about a decade ago, and my students, they came from like Asia, South America, Europe, everywhere. But they would often come into me early in their sort of first week or two in Australia, and they would say to me in this great shock that they'd seen like a grown-up at the supermarket with no shoes on, and they couldn't understand, and they thought like we're poverty-stricken, that we can't afford shoes, or what's going on. They always wanted to know, and I said, that's just the Australian way. We don't always wear shoes, so don't stress. So, but
oh my goodness, okay,
so
that doesn't
funny.
happen in Melbourne quite as much as it happens in Perth. It's been a long time since I've seen an adult in the supermarket without shoes.
That's probably true. That's hilarious. I never thought about that. Yeah, probably Melbourne is too grown up for that, whereas in Perth we're full of the kind of people who do not wear shoes to the supermarket. So, yeah.
Oh, I love it. It does remind me of my childhood. Yeah, I haven't seen that for a long time, actually. It's brilliant.
So funny. So that was Penny. I met her in 2017 through the podcast. And when I kept trawling through my notes, I found that about 6 months later, in early 2018, I, for the first time, interviewed a German blogger at the time, still a blogger, in fact, and doctor and all sorts of things, Eva Westerling. So Eva was living in Germany when we first met online. I also, similarly to Penny, can't quite remember how we first connected, but perhaps it was through the Thoughtful Travellers podcast group on Facebook. I'm not actually 100% sure. But anyway, Eva and I chatted for the first time back in January 2018. And since then, we've become really good friends. Eva has, in fact, been out to Perth to visit and stay with us for, oh goodness, a week or two. That was like the year before COVID, so lucky. And also, intriguingly, thanks to someone she met through the podcast, through the Thoughtful Travellers group, and someone who was interviewed, Eva actually ended up going to Morocco on a safari in the desert, and has ended up staying there. She's actually briefly back in Germany now, but she's more or less based in Morocco these days. And that's actually thanks to my podcast, really, which is super weird, hey? She may have found her way there in other ways, I'm sure. Eva was always ready to do a big lot of travelling, but it's kind of cool. So we chat quite regularly, and we'll do a video chat, periodically every few weeks. So in the last year or so, I've been watching Eva stroll through near the desert in southern Morocco, which has been, really cool to watch. At the moment, I've been watching her stroll around Germany and seeing that familiar architecture to me as we chat. So, that's another friendship that I wouldn't have without the podcast, and I'm grateful for. And it's been kind of funny to listen back to when we were first getting to know each other. And in this chat, we had actually been discussing her experience climbing an active volcano in Vanuatu. Wow.
No, but that was great.
That is very cool. My son, who's 7, is very interested in volcanoes, so I will have to tell him tomorrow morning that I talked to someone who climbed an erupting volcano, and he will think that is super cool. So,
well, you should take him there.
I was going to say he will put Vanuatu on his list.
Probably.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's a nice place altogether. Like, other things we did was like abseil down a 50-meter waterfall, and lots of diving and snorkeling. So it's a fantastic place to go. And it's not so far from where you live. See, I think Europeans are so jealous of Australians because they have paradise in front of their doorsteps, all those islands and, all the tropical stuff you can do and the tropical places you can go to. So I wish I
true. I know it's always, the grass is always greener. From Perth, it's quicker to fly to Bali than it is to fly to the next Australian city. So we're very close to Indonesia. So it's and a lot of people think that that's like the biggest paradise, and to us it's just the kind of the backyard. So we always want what we haven't got. I want to be back in Europe where you can go like anywhere and everywhere just for the weekend.
Yeah, let's swap.
Yes. Done. Oh, that's so cool. Another friend I've made through the podcast is Erin Gustaffson, who runs the blog Oregon Girl Around the World. And she is based currently in Copenhagen in Denmark. And we chatted for the first time about 3 years ago in the middle of 2018. And she gave me so many lovely tips about Denmark that about a year later, when it came time to decide where would we go for our holiday, which was an add-on to a trip to Thailand, and these airfares came up that could be either to Norway or Denmark, I was like, oh my goodness, I know. Erin gave me all these tips. I'm going to Denmark. And of course, my son piped up and said, yes, and we're going to Legoland and the Lego house. So it was a done deal. But it definitely, getting to know Erin really enhanced that trip. And we were very lucky to be able to meet up with Erin for a day in Copenhagen as well. She took us out for an amazing brunch and to a really cool park where my son could play while we could chat, and it was just fabulous to get to know her, in person, and we're always in touch as well. So it's just another fabulous example. We only got to know each other through the podcast initially, and then got to meet. So I just want to play a little bit of our chat from back then in our first time, and we were talking about coming out of a long winter, which really resonates with me right now because we've had a much grayer than usual winter here in Perth and have just seen sunshine for the first time in, I don't know, it feels like 6 or 7 weeks, which is a long time in Perth. It's usually a very sunny city. So it was interesting to listen back to this chat with Erin. Yeah.
But the flowers in spring are brilliant.
Yes.
And that's when the light starts staying longer also. Yeah.
Yeah. You've come out of it. You're coming out the other side. I would find that darkness of winter very, very hard. So, yeah.
That's why we have Huya.
Yes, true. Yes, you need it. This is exactly right. Yes, you need some excuse, some cozy way to decide that it's okay to live in this terrible terrible darkness for so long. Oh, dear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. How long have you lived in Copenhagen?
3.5 years.
Okay. And are you planning to stay for indefinitely or for a while, or what's the... Or is it unknown?
Are you my mom?
Can you put up with the darkness forever, or does it become something that you have to run away from?
I don't know. It's, it feels long and then it changes, and it's just so beautiful here that you just kind of, it's after you give birth that you forget that.
Yes,
it's
good analogy.
And then you decide that we're going to have another one.
Yes,
that right now it has been just so stunning and gorgeous that it's the most beautiful place on the planet kind of feeling. Wow. And you can see yourself, I could live here forever. Again, don't tell my mom. No, I don't know. There's a lot of pros to staying. There's this is longer than we anticipated. We had an intention of 2 years when we came, and then job promotions and kids doing well in school and continued travel opportunities and healthy, happy family. It's a really good quality of life.
Oh, wonderful.
So it does. The con would be that dark winter, and being so far away. I'm sure you can relate to that, being Germany versus Australia, but it feels really far away from family, and so that is definitely a big pull to not stay.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? I'm still very disappointed that we haven't improved transport to the point where we can zip around a little bit faster.
Right.
So someone should get onto that. I mean, I remember as a child, it took us, about 24 hours to get from Australia to Europe. And I'm now 42, and it still takes about 24 hours to get from Australia to Europe, and that's a really long time. And we now have these one-way flights from Perth to London, which is something horrific because it's 16 hours or 17 hours or something.
Oh wow!
I know,
okay,
can you
that
imagine?
Is really long.
Yes, but if you don't do the non-stop one, then it takes 24 hours because you have to stop somewhere and get off a plane and wait for another one and blah blah blah. And it's just. It's so far. It's horrible.
Yes.
Like with, actually quite a lot of my guests, I just hit it off with Erin immediately on our chat, and, I just love the fact that I get to meet lots of cool people and have, enduring friendships with many of them. Now, my final little extract today is from my very first chat with Justin Watson, which was 2 and a bit years ago. April in 2019. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Justin because he has become my co-host for the Thoughtful Travellers Book Club. And I'm immensely grateful because after, I don't know how soon, it was maybe the third or fourth book or so. And I knew it was a book that I was kind of going to struggle to chat about on my own. And I reached out to Justin, who'd been, so far an active member of the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group and also been, an active participant in the Thoughtful Travellers Book Club. And I said, hey, do you want to hop on this call with me and we can chat about it together, with no particular plan in mind. And he said, yeah, why not? And he's been there ever since, every early Sunday morning sometimes or whatever time we end up running the Thoughtful Travellers Book Club. And he's read the book, had some, really interesting thoughts about it, and just makes it so much more fun for me to be able to talk about a book than just droning on my own. And sometimes, like last week, we get to also meet the author of the book together. And we've actually still never met in person because, COVID. So we haven't been able to have any, been in the same place at the same time yet. Justin's based on the other side of Australia in Canberra, but look forward to meeting him sometime for sure. And Justin, another just big thank you to you for so selflessly being part of the Thoughtful Travellers Book Club for no personal benefit at all. But I do have so much fun doing that with you, so I really appreciate it. And another great friend I have made through the podcast. So this is just a very brief extract from the very first time that Justin and I spoke. And he'd come on as a guest just because I'd put a call out for particular topics in the Thoughtful Travellers Facebook group. Cool. All right, I'm about to have a massive coughing fit, so I'm going to go before I subject you to it. Thank you. You've been very healthy. Well done.
No worries.
I've been muting myself all the time. So I didn't hear you at all. I've been muting myself throughout our conversation. But I think I managed to mute all the right times. It's hard to tell sometimes.
I didn't hear anything, so
cool.
all is good there.
Excellent.
Cool.
Well, so good to talk to you. Thank you for spending the time.
Great.
And
you might even get a few subscribers out of it because everyone who I've told I'm recording for a podcast and gone, really?
Oh, cool.
And I said, I had to subscribe so we can listen to you.
Oh, thank you. That's awesome.
You might get 2 or 3 subscribers. We'll see.
Everyone counts. So
might only just listen to the one episode.
I'll have a big spike on your episodes. Yes. So thanks. That's awesome. Thank you.
No worries.
All right, I'll let you go.
Yeah.
And have a fabulous time in Malaysia. Well, there you go. That is kind of a combo of peeking behind the scenes of the Thoughtful Travel podcast and a big shout out and thank you to some of the fabulous friends I've made through making the podcast. And that's just a selection of them. But you guys all know who you are, and I'm so grateful to have you as part of my life these days and to be able to chat all things thoughtful travel with all these fabulous like-minded people. So thank you very much for listening to episode 250 of the Thoughtful Travel podcast, the semi-quincentennial episode, as Justin told me I should call it. A really big thanks to everyone who unknowingly, actually, because I haven't mentioned this to any of these people yet, have contributed to this episode with parts of our recordings from long ago. So you can find them all over the place on the internet. First of all, I used an extract, really. I didn't chat specifically for this episode, with Ian Oliver from Travel Tales from Beyond the Brochure. So you can look up his podcast or you can look him up at Barefoot Backpacker. I then talked about my friendship with Penny Wincer, and you can find her at pennywincerwrites.com and definitely look up her book Tender. After that, I talked about meeting Eva Westerling, and you can find more about what Eva's up to at her blog, notscaredofthejetlag.com. She's also organising tours in Morocco now, so if you want to go out into the desert, Eva is your person. I then mentioned Erin from OregonGirlAroundTheWorld.com, who's currently based in Copenhagen in Denmark. And last but not least, my Thoughtful Travellers Book Club co-host, Justin Watson. If you want to keep up with more things we're doing with Thoughtful Travellers, you can come to the Facebook group. Just look for Thoughtful Travellers in Facebook, and you can find us there and request to join the group. There's also a LinkedIn group, and the easiest way to find that is go to notaballerina.com/LinkedIn. All of these links and everything else will be at the show notes. And for this episode, those show notes are at notaballerina.com/250 for episode 250. I hope you've enjoyed this unusual and different episode. I'll have to be honest and say I have loved making it. It's been such a delightful trip down memory lane. So thanks to everyone who's been involved with the Thoughtful Travel podcast over these first 250 episodes. So as always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.